Nut. The notification came at 11:37 on a Tuesday morning. I know the exact time because I had been staring at my phone for 20 minutes already, waiting. Not for that notification. For a different one. One that never came. I was sitting in my car, in the parking structure of the Harmon Building in downtown Seattle, still wearing the blazer I had ironed twice the night before, holding a coffee that had gone cold somewhere between the third floor and the realization that no one from my family was coming. My phone buzzed. It was my cousin posting a photo to the family group chat, my brother Marcus, grinning at a backyard table, holding up a pair of tongs over a grill. The caption said, "Surprise promotion cookout for our guy." So proud. There were 11 heart emojis. My aunt had replied already. My father had replied already. 3 fire emojis, 2 clapping hands, 1 from my mother that said, "We love you so much. This family makes me so happy." I had sent my message to that same group chat 4 days earlier. The address. The time. A single sentence. "I hope you'll be there." No response. Not even a thumbs up from my father. In 40 minutes, I was scheduled to walk into a room of 70 people and present the product I had spent 3 years building. I put my phone face down on the passenger seat and got out of the car. Let me back up, because the parking structure moment only makes sense if you understand the 12 years before it. I grew up in Phoenix, the older of 2 kids, in a house that operated on a logic I spent most of my childhood trying to decode and most of my 20s accepting I never would. My brother Marcus is 4 years younger than me and built like a story people want to tell. Loud in the right rooms. Comfortable being watched. The kind of person who can walk into a party where he knows no one and walk out with 3 new friends and a job lead. I do not say this to diminish him. I say it because it is true, and because the way my parents responded to it shaped everything that came after. Marcus's C in algebra was something to problem solve together as a family. My A was, just make sure you keep it up. Marcus's junior varsity soccer season was a calendar event with printed schedules on the refrigerator. My debate team state finals were, oh, that's the same weekend as his tournament. You know how important this stretch is for him. Marcus dropping out of community college after 1 semester was, he's figuring himself out. Not everyone learns the same way. Me receiving a full merit scholarship to the University of Washington was, you'll want to call your grandmother, she'd love to hear it from you directly, which I did. And she cried. And it was enough. Even though it shouldn't have had to be. I want to be fair about this. My parents are not villains. They are people who loved both their children and consistently, automatically, weightlessly chose one of us when it mattered. The choosing was never loud, it didn't announce itself. It just accumulated, the way water damage does, quiet and patient, until one day you press on a wall and your hand goes through. I studied computer science and public health informatics at UW. Took every elective that sat at the intersection of the two, and graduated in 4 years with honors and a thesis on using passive biometric data to improve chronic disease management in underserved populations. My parents came to graduation. That part I want to say clearly because it is true. They came, they took photos. My mother cried a little. My father shook my hand and said he was proud. 2 hours later at dinner, my father spent 40 minutes talking to my uncle about Marcus's new landscaping business and what equipment he should invest in. I sat across the table and ate my salmon and recalibrated. The way I had been recalibrating my whole life, lowering the ceiling of my own expectations so the distance between what I hoped for and what arrived wouldn't be enough to fall from. After graduation, I moved to Seattle and spent 2 years at a mid-sized health tech company doing back-end development for insurance platforms. Useful work. Not the work I wanted. The work I wanted was what I had written about in my thesis. The idea had been in my head for 3 years by then, a mobile application that could help people with type 2 diabetes manage their condition using patterns in their everyday phone behavior, step counts, sleep interruptions, calendar density, dietary logging, without requiring them to buy additional devices or pay for premium subscriptions they couldn't afford. The people I had written about in my thesis, people who looked like my grandmother, who had managed her diabetes alone for 11 years in a house in South Phoenix because the nearest endocrinologist was 40 miles away and she didn't drive on highways. I quit my job at 28. I had 18 months of savings, a one-bedroom apartment, and a prototype that worked about 60% of the time. I called the app Steadyline. I'm going to compress the next 3 years because the specifics are less important than the shape of them. I worked. I failed at things and fixed them and failed at different things. I found a co-founder, a public health researcher named Dara, who had spent 5 years working in community clinics in rural Alabama and understood the user we were building for in a way that made my work better. We got a small seed grant. We got rejected from 11 accelerators and accepted by 1. We rebuilt the core algorithm twice. We brought on 2 engineers. We did a limited beta with a clinic network in Eastern Washington, and the data was good, better than good. Good in the way that makes you sit quietly for a while before you let yourself believe it. The launch event was scheduled for the second Tuesday in March. 70 attendees, health system executives, potential investors, representatives from 3 community clinic networks, 2 journalists. The kind of room that, if it went well, would mean something real for the company. Dara and I had been preparing for 6 weeks. I had sent the details to my family a month out. I had followed up 2 weeks before. I had sent the group chat message 4 days prior. I walked into that room at 12:03, 2 minutes before my own presentation was scheduled to start, and the seat I had held for my mother was empty. I presented for 31 minutes. I know because I had timed it to exactly that in rehearsal and I hit it almost perfectly, which tells you something about what dissociation can do for your focus. The room was engaged. There were good questions afterward, specific questions, the kind that mean people are already imagining using the thing you built. A health system director from Spokane asked if we had considered a partnership structure for rural clinic integration. A journalist from a health tech publication asked for a follow-up interview. A woman in the back row, older, silver hair, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, came up to me afterward and said, "I lost my sister to complications from unmanaged diabetes 6 years ago. She lived 40 minutes from any specialist. I want you to know what you're building matters." She held my hand for a moment and then walked away before I could respond. I stood there holding a glass of water and thought about my grandmother. I thought about the empty seat. I thought about 11 heart emojis on a photo of a man holding tongs. My mother texted at 4 p.m., "How did it go? Hope it was wonderful." I replied that it went well. She sent a smiley face. That night I opened my laptop and began drafting an email I had been composing in the back of my mind for about 2 years. It took me 4 drafts and most of a bottle of wine to get it right. I told my parents I was stepping back from regular family contact. I told them it was not a punishment. I told them I needed to stop arranging my life around the hope that they would someday show up for it the way I had always shown up for them. I told them I loved them and meant it, and that I needed space to figure out what an honest relationship with them might look like, if one was possible. I also told them I had legally changed my last name. My last name had been Calhoun. I changed it to Merritt, my maternal grandmother's maiden name. The grandmother with the diabetes. The one I had called from the dorm hallway after my scholarship news. She had died my junior year of college and left me her cast iron skillet, a box of handwritten recipe cards, and a voicemail I still have saved on an old phone that says, in her specific dry way, "I knew you'd get it. Don't let them make a fuss. Just keep going." Claire Merritt felt like a name I could build something in. Claire Calhoun had started to feel like a costume I had been wearing for someone else's performance. I told my parents about the name change in the same email. I explained the reason. I tried to be kind without being dishonest. My mother called 3 times that week. I let it go to voicemail. Her messages moved in a clear emotional arc, confused, then hurt, then something that resembled understanding, then a return to hurt. On the 4th call, she left a message that said, "Your brother is really struggling right now and I think he could use your support. I hope you're not doing this because of the launch thing because we really did mean to come." I played that message twice. My father sent a single text. It said, "You've always been dramatic about everything." I did not respond. Marcus sent nothing. I moved through the next 6 months the way you move through something that is both difficult and clarifying. Seattle stayed. Dara and I closed a Series A round in June. We hired 4 more people. The Spokane Health System partnership came through. I was actually sleeping, for the first time in years, in a way that felt like my nervous system had been quietly waiting for permission. And then, on a Wednesday morning in September, I opened our platform's routine data audit report and saw something that made me set down my coffee and read the whole thing twice. Steadyline had expanded its clinic integrations to include a network of 12 community health centers across the Pacific Northwest. Part of our data infrastructure involved anonymized aggregate health outcome reporting, shared with partnering clinic systems to help them benchmark care quality. The audit was flagging anomalies in outcome data coming from one specific clinic network, not clinical anomalies. Reporting anomalies. Someone in the data pipeline was manually adjusting aggregate outcome figures before they were submitted to the shared database. The adjustments were small, the kind that might look like rounding or data cleaning if you weren't looking carefully. But I was looking carefully, and what they were doing, whoever was doing it, was making the care quality metrics for that clinic network look better than the raw patient data supported. I ran the analysis 3 times. I had Dara run it independently without telling her what I was looking for. She came back to me an hour later with the same finding. The clinic network was called Calhoun Community Health Partners. It had been incorporated 2 years earlier by a holding company that, after 40 minutes of public records research, I traced back to a board that included, as a managing partner, my father. I sat with that for a long time. Long enough that Dara knocked on my office door and asked if I was all right. I told her I needed an hour and closed the door. Here is what I knew. The data manipulation wasn't just an internal reporting problem. Calhoun Community Health Partners had applied for and received 2 federal grants in the previous 18 months, both of which used their reported outcome metrics as part of the justification for funding. Manipulated outcome data submitted in support of federal grant applications is fraud. Not a gray area, not a technicality. Fraud with specific legal exposure for everyone involved in the reporting chain. I also knew that my father almost certainly did not know this was happening. He was a real estate developer who had pivoted into healthcare investment in his early 60s without, as far as I could tell, any meaningful understanding of health data compliance, which did not eliminate his legal exposure. It just changed the shape of it. I contacted our legal counsel that afternoon. She listened, asked 12 very precise questions, and said, "You know what this means for your platform's relationship with that clinic network?" I said I did. She said, "And you understand your obligations under federal research data integrity requirements?" I said I did. She said, "Then we go to the relevant federal oversight body and we document everything from the moment you discovered this. Timing matters." She paused. "I'm sorry this is complicated by what it's complicated by." I called my father that night. He answered on the first ring, which surprised me. We had not spoken in almost 5 months. I told him what I had found. I was precise. I gave him the specific nature of the anomalies, the grant applications involved, the legal exposure. I told him I believed it was likely someone on the operational side of the clinic network who had made the adjustments, possibly without his knowledge, but that his name was on the governing documents, and that the exposure was real regardless of who had initiated it. There was silence for a long time. Then, "You're doing this because of the launch." I breathed. "I'm doing this," I said, "because people could be harmed by false outcome data influencing how funding gets allocated to community clinics. And because you have a window to get ahead of this before federal investigators find it themselves, which they will. People aren't being harmed. These are just numbers. The numbers determine which clinics get funded to serve actual patients," I said. "That's the harm." I heard my mother's voice in the background. Then the familiar sound of the phone being passed. "Claire, honey." My mother's voice was careful. "You have to understand what this would do to your father. He has worked so hard on this project. He genuinely believes in what these clinics are doing." "Then he should want the data to be accurate," I said. "You're not a lawyer. You don't know for certain what this even means." "I have a lawyer," I said. "I called her this afternoon." Silence again. My father came back on the line. "We missed one event, and now you want to take apart everything we've built." I felt something steady and clear move through me, the way cold water feels when you drink it quickly. "You have missed a lot of things," I said quietly. "That's a separate conversation that I hope we can have someday. Right now I'm telling you that you have maybe 60 days to conduct an internal audit and self-report before a platform's compliance filing triggers an external review. That is the conversation I am having right now." He hung up. I contacted the Office of Inspector General the following morning. I submitted our full technical analysis, our audit documentation, and a complete disclosure of my familial relationship to the clinic network's leadership. Our legal counsel had prepared everything. The submission was clean, specific, and supported by 6 months of data. Dara knew by then, of course. I had told her the morning of the OIG submission. She had sat across from me in the small conference room and listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You know this might affect the partnership timeline." I said I knew. She said, "Okay, then we do the right thing and we handle the rest." That was all. I had chosen my co-founder well. The investigation moved with the kind of quiet efficiency that suggests the evidence was organized and the paper trail was clean, which it was. Within 90 days, Calhoun Community Health Partners had received a formal compliance notice, a mandatory corrective audit, and a requirement to return a portion of the grant funding received during the period in question. My father hired attorneys. 2 of the clinic network's operational staff resigned. The managing partner structure was restructured. I was listed in the federal documentation as a contributing whistleblower with a fully disclosed conflict of interest. I do not want to tell this as a story about winning, because it wasn't. Winning would require a scoreboard, and I had stopped wanting to compete with my family somewhere around the parking structure in March. What I felt, when the process concluded, was a specific kind of relief that has nothing to do with triumph and everything to do with integrity. I had found something. I had reported it accurately. I had told my father what was coming before it arrived. The outcome was not something I had engineered for revenge. It was something I had simply refused to look away from. My mother sent a letter. Actual paper, her handwriting on cream-colored stationery that she uses for things she considers serious. It said the legal process had been difficult and expensive. It said my father was tired in a way she hadn't seen before. It said Marcus had been upset and felt I had chosen my company over my family. Near the bottom, in slightly smaller letters than the rest, it said, "I have thought about the launch event many times. I'm not sure we understood what it meant for you to build something from nothing. I want you to know I watched the recording afterward. I read that paragraph 4 times. I noted what it was. An acknowledgement of absence, not an apology for it. Not an offer to understand why the absence had been one in a sequence of absences, or why that sequence had accumulated into something I could no longer absorb. But it was the most honest thing my mother had sent me in years, and it had only become affordable for her to write after consequences had arrived. I wrote back. I told her I was sorry for the difficulty they were going through. I told her I had tried to give my father the chance to address it before it became public. I told her I was open to real conversations, not performances of resolution, not family dinners where we agree to pretend the walls are fine while the water damage spreads. I signed it with my full name, my chosen name, both parts of it. The whistleblower protection payout when it came was larger than I had expected. I stared at the number for long enough that Dara, who was sitting across from me when I opened the email, asked if it was bad news. I showed her the screen. She closed her eyes for a moment, then she said, "Good. Now let's build the thing the right way." I put a portion of it into the company's Community Clinic Partnership Fund, specifically earmarked for onboarding rural clinics with limited IT infrastructure, the clinics that could not afford a long sales cycle, the patients who were in a direct line, the reason I had started building Steadyline in the first place, my grandmother's line. I put another portion toward a down payment on a house in the East Lake neighborhood, with a back deck that looks out over the water and a kitchen large enough to actually use the cast iron skillet. I have not spoken to my father. My mother and I exchange brief emails, careful and honest in a way our relationship was not before. She asked me recently if I was happy. I told her I was building toward it, which was the most accurate thing I could say. She said that sounded like me. I think she meant it as a compliment. Marcus sent a message in December. It said only, "Hope you're doing okay." I replied that I was. Both things were true. Here is what I know now that I did not know at 28. Sitting in a parking garage in a blazer I had ironed twice, waiting for a notification that wasn't going to come. Some people are only capable of understanding the value of what you've built when the absence of their support becomes visible in the structure of something else. That is not a cruelty, it is a limitation. And limitations, clearly seen, are not the same as betrayals. They are just the shape of a thing. My grandmother's cast iron skillet is seasoned now, properly, the way the recipe card said to do it. The deck gets good light in the mornings. I make coffee and watch the water and think, this is what I was trying to get to. Not the house, not the payout, not the absence of them. Just this. Enough quiet to hear myself clearly. So I want to leave you with something before I go. If the people who are supposed to show up for you have consistently chosen comfort over presence, convenience over witness, at what point does continuing to leave the seat open for them become a way of telling yourself you don't deserve a full room? I'm not saying cut everyone off. I'm saying notice the pattern, name it honestly. And then decide, with clear eyes, what you actually want to do with what you now know. Because information, in the right hands, is not a wound. It's just the beginning of a better map.